Good morning students. This is 10th standard biology video class, video 5. In this video, we are going to continue the lesson reproduction in plants and animals. Dear students, the previous video class we have seen how cross-pollination is taken place with the help of external agents. First we have seen pollination in wind, that is, the pollen grains are very small, lightweight, and they are carried away by the wind for pollination. Another one, pollination by insects. Honeybees and flies are carrying the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. The flowers are larger in size, very attractive, different color. Nectar secreting glands are produced. So these characteristic features attract the insects and carries the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. 80% of insect pollination is taken place by honeybees. Dear students, pollination by wind is known as anemophily. Pollination by insects is known as entomophily. Then and also we have seen some water plants, aquatic plants. Pollination is taken place by water. That is said to be hydrophily. Example, hydrilla and vallisneria plant showing the pollination by water. After this only we have seen in the previous video class. Now we are going to see the next topic, pollination by animals, and then we are going to start the reproduction in human beings or animals. Dear students, the next topic is pollination by animals. So animals also carrying the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. That pollination is known as zoophily. Zoo for animals, phily means pollination. So pollination by animals is known as zoophily. So in these plants, flowers are different color, attract the animals, and also the size is also very big, producing sweet smell. This characteristic feature attracts the sunbird, pollinates flowers of canna and gladioli plants. Squirrels also pollinates flowers of silk cotton tree. So this is the different animals which are transferring the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. That pollination is known as zoophily. Dear students, see the diagram. This is the sunbird which are transferring the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. That is in gladioli flower. They are transferring the pollen grains. So this type of pollination is known as zoophily. See the arrangement of your flowers. They are colored, bigger in size, and also producing sweet smell. Dear students, this is the another pollination by hummingbird. That is, the flower is known as canna. In Tamil it known as kottai vazhai. It's a kind of plant and tree. So in this plant, pollination is taken place by sunbird. The flower is also very bigger in size, colored, producing sweet smell. So this character attracted by the birds to transfer the pollen grains. Dear students, we have seen 85% of pollination is taken place by honeybee. See the flower, bright color, larger in size. Many larger size pollen grains also produced, that is yellow in color, which are pollinated by the honeybees. And also these flowers producing the sweet smell, and also honey, that is nectar secreting substances also produced in these plants. So these characteristic feature attracted by the insects for pollination. So this pollination is known as entomophily. Dear students, this is the diagram which are showing how insects pollination is taken place in one flower to another flower. First one, a insect which visits the flower due to the nectar secreting gland, larger size and color of a flower, producing sweet smell. Then when it is sucking the nectar or honey from the flower, the pollen grains, powdery pollen grains are rubbed into the legs. Then after sucking the honey or a nectar, the bee is transmitted from or flying from one flower to another flower. At that time it carries the pollen grains on the legs region and also body surface. Then when it reaches to the another flower, it sits on the stigma of a gynoecium and dust the pollen grains of a the pollen grains on the stigma region of a flower. Thus pollination is taken place by insects. So this is the diagram which are showing how insects carrying the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. Dear students, this is also another diagram which are showing the cross pollination. What is cross pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from one flower to another flower. Same species of the different plant, isn't it? So first one, male gamete, that is pollen grains taken by the external agent. What is that one? Insects, and reaches to the another flower of a stigma, that is known as cross pollination. So the cross pollination only which are producing new combination of a plant with new varieties. So that's why cross pollination is very much important for plant breeding method. Plant breeding method means how we can able to produce the newly formed species with a new characteristic future. So that is said to be pollination and its type, pollinating agents, how they are transferring the pollen grains. That is divided into wind, water, air and animals. And also we have seen advantage and disadvantages of pollination. So this is the first step which is taken place in the sexual reproduction. Now we are going to see the another process of sexual reproduction, that is fertilization. Dear students, the next topic is fertilization in plants. So this is the structure of a ovary, style and stigma, that is gynoecium. At the basal portion it is said to be the ovary. Then the tubular like structure is known as style, and the tip they are having the stigma. The pollen grains which are carried away by the wind or water or animals or insects, which is landed on the stigma region. Once they are landed on the stigma region, the pollen grains are germinated. Germinated means the structure of the pollen grains we have seen, isn't it? Inner side they are having the dense cytoplasm and vegetative cell and generative cell. The vegetative cell afterwards produce a tubular like structure is known as pollen tube, with the help of the nucleus is known as tube nucleus. So then once they are producing the tubular like structure, they pass through the stylar region, a stylar path or a canal, and then it is reaches to the micropylar region of an ovule. So through the micropylar region only, it is reaches to the egg apparatus or embryo sac. So what is embryo sac? What is the structure of an ovule? everything we are going to see in this video. Dear students, process of fertilization. First, pollen grains reach the right stigma and begin to germinate. I told you. So this is the topmost region, it's said to be stigma. The pollen grains are reaches to the stigma and attached to the stigma region. And also it readies to germinate. Germinate means what is that one? It produce the pollen tube. Then pollen grains forms a small tubular like structure called pollen tube, which is emerges means comes out of the minute pore which is present in the exine, is known as germ pore. That one also we have seen in the structure of a pollen grain. The outer surface of the pollen grain is thorny and leave a minute pore or opening is known as germ pore. Through this germ pore only there emerges the pollen tube outside. The content of the pollen grain is also moved to the pollen tube. So whenever they are producing the pollen tube, the content which is present in the pollen grains is also moved to the pollen tube. Then next the pollen tube grows through the tissue of the stigma and style and finally reaches the ovule through the micropyle. So I showed that one. Once the pollen tubes are produced, they pass through the stylar canal region or a path and reaches to the micropylar region of the ovule. Then the vegetative cell degenerate means disintegrate. Once the pollen tube is formed, the vegetative cell is destroy or disintegrate. At the time, the another cell is known as what is that one? Generative cell. So this generative cell divides and produces the two male gametes or two sperms. So at this stage, the tip of the pollen tube is burst and liberate the two sperms into the embryo sac region. Now, one of the male gamete is fuses with the egg, which forms the diploid zygote. The another sperm or a male gamete fuses with the polar nuclei present at the center of an ovule, which forms the secondary nuclei or polar nuclei. That process is known as triple fusion because polar nuclei which contains two nucleus plus one male gamete nucleus is also added. So it forms 3n number of chromosomes. That condition is known as triple fusion. This due to triple fusion, they are forming the primary endosperm. The primary endosperm nucleus, which is triploid in nature, that means 3n number of chromosomes. So, dear students, two fusion is taken place inside the ovule. That is, one male gamete fuses with the egg. The syngamy, the fertilization is taken place. The another name of fertilization is syngamy. The another fusion is the other male gamete fuses with the two secondary nucleus or polar nuclei, which forms the triple fusion in an embryo sac. This process is known as double fertilization. That is, two fertilization process is taken place in the ovule region. Then after the triple fusion, the primary endosperm nucleus which developed into endosperm. So the endosperm is the nutritive or food material of the growing embryo. Then later the antipodal cells and synergid cells are disintegrate. So these two of them which is present in the micropylar region and another one is the chalasa region. So synergists which are present in the micropylar region of an ovule, antipodals which are present in the chalasa region which is disintegrate. So that is the fertilization process taken place in plants. Dear students, up to this we have seen what is pollination, what is fertilization, how it is taken place in the plants. The fertilization is two types. One is the syngamy or fertilization. Another one is the triple fusion, which forms the primary endosperm nucleus and produce endosperm. This endosperm which gives the food material for the growing embryo. So this is the fertilization process which is occur in the higher plants of angiospermic plant. Now we are going to see how reproduction is taken place in human being. So human beings which are showing sexual reproduction, they are producing two different sex organs, male sex organ and female sex organ. So this sexual reproduction you already studied in the 9th standard itself. The human gametes, male and female, which are showing physiologically and anatomically different structure. Physiologically means functionally they are showing different function. Anatomically means the internal structure of male gamete and the female gamete showing the differentiation or variation. So how this male gametes and the female gametes fuses together to form a diploid zygote by a process is known as syngamy or fertilization. So this process is known as sexual reproduction. So the sexual reproduction is taken place with the help of the different reproductive organs with the system. This reproductive system is divided into two types. One is the primary sex organ, another one is the secondary sex organ. Secondary sex organs are named as accessory sex organs. They are not directly involved in the fertilization process, but they are helping to the reproductive process, so that they are known as secondary or accessory sex organs. Dear students, before going to see the sexual reproduction in human beings, we have to see the important topic, significance of fertilization in plants. This is the important 2-mark question. Here, due to fertilization, the ovary which is developed into an fruit is the important reproductive organ. Then the fertilization helps to produce newly formed individuals with a new character. So that is the significance or uses or advantages of fertilization. First one, ovary, part of an gynoecium, is modified into fruit. Another one, they are producing newly formed individuals or a plant with new characters. Then another important topic, post-fertilization changes, is important 2-mark and 3-mark question, 4-mark question. After fertilization, what are all the changes occur in the floral parts? That is said to be post-fertilization changes in flower. First one, the ovule present inside the fruit modified into, the ovule which is present inner side of the ovary, which is modified into seed in a fruit region. Then the integument of the ovule, which are modified into protective covering of a seed coat. Then the ovary, which is enlarges, increase in size and modified into fruit. So these are all the 3 post-fertilization changes occur in the plant parts. Then the seed contains the future plant or embryo which developed into seedlings. That means new plant under favorable condition or appropriate condition. So that is said to be post-fertilization changes occur in the plants. So, significance of fertilization and post-fertilization changes is very, very important. 2 mark and 4 mark question. Then, how fertilization occur in the plant parts is the important 5 mark question. Along with the diagram, you have to explain the fertilization process. Dear students, see the diagram. Inner side of the ovary, they are having the ovule. The ovule which contains two regions, micropylar region and chalasa region. It is surrounded by a two integument, that means protective layer, which leaves the minute opening is called a micropyle. Through the micropyle only, the pollen grains are germinated with the pollen tube, reaches to the embryo sac, nucellus region of the ovule. At the center, they are having the egg nucleus. Totally it is known as egg apparatus. Consists of 7 celled and 8 nuclei. Micropylar region having the 3 nuclei, 1 egg nuclei and the synergids. We already seen in the previous video class. Opposite to the micropylar region is the chalasa. There they are having the 3 antipodal cells. At the center they are having 2 polar nuclei or secondary nuclei. So the male gamete reaches to the nucellus region and also it reaches to the egg or ova through the synergids. One male gamete fuses with the egg to form the diploid zygote. The other male gamete fuses with the secondary nucleus, which forms the 3 nucleus, that is known as triple fusion, which forms the primary endosperm nucleus, afterwards developed into embryo sac. Once the embryo sac and zygote are produced, inner side, the antipodal cells and synergid cells are disintegrate. Now the embryo sac which contains the growing embryo. This embryo sac which are giving the food material to the growing embryos. So this is the fertilization process which is occur in the plant. Dear students, after that only the post-fertilization changes are taken place. That is, this ovule only modified into seeds. The integument of the ovule which is modified into seed coat of an seed. Then the ovary part which is modified into fruit region. So this is the fertilization changes occur in the plant parts. So dear students, this is the two important process, pollination and fertilization, taken place in sexual reproduction of plants. I hope have you all understood what is pollination. 2 types of pollination, cross-pollination and self-pollination. Then cross-pollination need external agent. How pollination taken place by wind, anemophily. Then water, hydrophily. Insects, entomophily. Animals, zoophily. Then we have seen advantage and disadvantages of self-pollination and cross-pollination. Then we have seen another process of sexual reproduction, that is fertilization. How pollen grains which is reaches to the ovule of an gynecium and how it is fuses with the egg which forms the zygote. That process is called fertilization. Dear students, after this I conclude my video. Remaining we will see in the next video class. God bless you. All the best, children.